Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic show. It's episode 416. We've got a great guest. Got Michelle from Memberium with us. Mitch, would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Micah Mitchell with Memberium. I love that you can't pronounce our company name. Everybody gives us a hard time about that. And we're like, but that's what makes it
I can't pronounce anything, so I would take it personally. If you listen to some of the previous episodes, my ability to butcher my beloved interviewees' names, company names, is notorious. So don't take it personal.
No, I don't care. Everybody calls me something different. It's cool.
No, and would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers?
Yeah, I'm his co-host, and he calls me Andrew. I'm never letting me live that down. Hi, my name is Adrian. I'm the CEO and founder of Groundhog, a marketing automation plugin for WordPress. And I'm super excited to have this interview because I've actually been aware of your company and what you do in the Infusionsoft space. And you've actually been a huge proponent for a lot of our previous customers. And current customers for another product that I run. So it's really exciting, and I'm looking forward to this interview.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to be here, guys.
So we're in halfway or gone past the halfway of 2019. Is there anything on the highway in the near future where you see marketing automation going?
Is that a question to me?
Yes, it is.
So my friends tell me sometimes that I'm a Luddite, so I'm not like into the future of tech all the time. But I would just say that just everything mobile, which has been obviously, it's there, it's been creeping up for years. But for me, more and more, it's like, I have a software company and I don't even use my desktop anymore. I used to be very much against phones. Like I didn't have any apps. I hated my phone. I didn't think it was healthy to have around, like the battery and stuff like that. But more and more, I'm just like, whatever. It's 1,000% mobile. And so I've got a lot of friends who have text platforms, and some of them starting new texting platforms. And I know it's a stupid, simple answer, but that's all I can think about. It's just mobile.
Yeah, funny enough, I'm totally opposite. I do use mobile, but I'm stuck in front of my main screen most of the day, so I'm kind of pinned down to my desktop. It's interesting that, as you say that. Adrian, got a question?
I do, yeah. So I run a company called FormLift, which is our Infusionsoft kind of connector in between WordPress and FormLift. And for those of you who are unaware of what Memberium actually does, it's a very, very powerful membership platform that offers a couple integrations with other CRMs. But you started out mostly serving the Infusionsoft niche, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so can you tell us a little bit about, how, let's talk about how you got started and why it is you decided to do that niche, and how actually just serving a particular niche is a very common marketing strategy, just picking a niche and sticking with it. How you actually started to grow that and serve that niche in order to actually build your business to where it is today.
So I'll try to give a shorter version of it, but in essence, I was doing a consulting. Like I had going to quit my job and started a lawn care company. And that's what I bought Infusionsoft for my lawn care company, which was total overkill. But I learned Infusionsoft, and then I taught myself to do websites and junk like that. And so then I was doing websites for Infusionsoft people, or I should say I was just doing websites, and there's kind of a trend of Infusionsoft people. But I read a book by Michael Gerber called Awakening the Entrepreneur Within. And I really like his other book, The E-Myth, but that one, at the time I read it, for whatever reason, to me, it really kind of told me that I wasn't an entrepreneur. I was just some schmuck, trading time for dollars, right? And it made me decide. I started reading that book at my in-laws' house, and I ended up reading it all night. I think I finished at like 7 a.m. and I just sat in the chair and read it because it was just speaking to me about how I wasn't doing anything valuable. You know what I mean? I was just, and no offense to anybody, this is just my thinking about myself. I was just building websites, trading time for dollars. And when I read that, it really basically said, no, you've got to pick a market to serve and do something for them, make a difference in their lives, make a difference in the market.
En masse.
Yeah. And so I realized, okay, I've got to make products. And I initially started out doing some free videos and things like that just to get my toes wet. And then there was there was a lot of iterations of membership plugins for me, but it was all within the Infusionsoft space. So ultimately, with Memberium, you know, when Dave, who's been a friend of mine for maybe, I don't even know how long, maybe 10 years or so, when he came back around and said he had Memberium and I asked to license it, it was just a perfect match, saying, you know, I've completely dedicated myself to the Infusionsoft market. It only works for Infusionsoft. And so we just kind of ran with it and just stayed laser focused for a couple of years, meaning we didn't do custom work. We didn't want to integrate to other CRMs. We didn't want to talk to you if you weren't building a membership site with Infusionsoft on WordPress. We just didn't care. You know what I mean? And so that level of focus, I guess, is kind of what got Memberium to where it is.
Awesome. Thank you. And you also, just as a side note, you've also started to at least branch out into a couple, or at least into one other CRM at the moment, ActiveCampaign.
Yeah.
So what was your, what's your thought on, because there are a multitude of CRMs and solutions out there, my own included. Why ActiveCampaign? So you've been focused on this Infusionsoft niche for a really long time. And was it a couple years ago, 3 years ago that you released ActiveCampaign? How long ago was it?
Yeah, 2.5, maybe
2.5 years ago.
Yes.
So why all of a sudden shift or at least add that additional focus for ActiveCampaign?
Yeah, good question. There's two parts. Dave was familiar with ActiveCampaign, David Bullock, who developed Memberium. So he was already familiar with it and kind of had a soft spot for it. One of his previous, jobs, he was managing a bunch of them and he just liked them. And when we started talking to them, so he was kind of pushing it for a while. And when we finally talked to them, they're just such a cool company. They're so approachable. I love Infusionsoft. I've been around forever, so I know the people there, but there's a different culture. And at ActiveCampaign, even last summer when we went out and sponsored, we were hanging out with the CEO the whole time and chatting, and he's just hanging out. He's not trying to hide, or he doesn't try to get out of conversations or anything like that. And so because I felt like our values were very similar to theirs, that's what pushed me over the edge. But from a practical front, we had people leaving Memberium, and the number one reason for leaving Memberium was I'm leaving Infusionsoft, and the number one place they were going was ActiveCampaign. So it's kind of a simple, like, you guys are going over there? Well,
business decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even that I fought for a while, but as we got closer to them and talked to them more, it was just like, oh yeah, it's kind of a no-brainer with all that stuff put together.
Can we expect any new CRM integrations in the future, or are you sticking with Infusionsoft and ActiveCampaign for now?
We're just sticking with those two for now. We at one point looked at potentially integrating to I guess you'd call it like a CRM aggregator, where they've integrated to all these other CRMs. And we said, well, if we just integrate to them, suddenly our market opens up and we can connect to all these other things. But there's a few reasons we didn't. One is that integration was not as deep as we like to go. So with Infusionsoft, for example, we use everything we possibly can in their API to allow people to do whatever they want. We couldn't go that deep with all of those. We could just do a surface level thing, which isn't really what we're about. And the other thing is with our support, we really pride ourselves on support, and that requires them to know Infusion. People think that they're supporting their membership site, but typically it's all put together. We get a support ticket, and when we're troubleshooting, really the problem is that they set something up wrong in Infusionsoft. And so we have to be WordPress experts and Infusionsoft experts. And if we, the more CRMs we integrate to, the more training. And so with two now, we can still keep that quality high. So I think we'll stay for a while.
Makes a lot of sense. David?
Oh, that's me, is it?
Now I'm doing it. You got me doing it.
Nice.
Jonathan?
I thought you just did that on purpose, didn't you? He's only been my co-host for a couple of months, and he's quite teasing me, but also terrible. There we go. I asked for that, did I? Actually, that's the name of my brother, actually. David is my brother.
Nice.
Right.
I'm just going to call you both Bill from now on.
Well, I butchered your company's name to death, didn't I? I've been more worried about... Actually, I've been practicing it, Mitch, and the more I practice it, the worse it goes. I gave up.
It's all good.
Can you tell us why does somebody buy your company's product? What does it? Because to some of our listeners, they probably don't know, your company or product. What is its main reason, its main target audience, and why do they buy the product?
So really, we sit behind Infusionsoft is the way I think about it. And so...
And ActiveCampaign.
Yes. But it's kind of like people who buy one of those and want a membership site, then they go looking, right? And there's only, I don't know how many options. I guess there's plenty. But for the real like niche focused options, or the people who want them to grow the furthest, they go with Memberium. And when I have those sales conversations with people when they're trying to decide on different softwares, this is where I say like we have the depth. Usually a membership site, if it's worthwhile, you're going to do kind of a basic version first. And then if things are working, you're going to want to go further. And what people run into with other products is if the integration doesn't go as deep, then they have to switch. They build their site on a simple product. And then they want to do more, but it doesn't have that ability. So they either have to get it done custom or they have to switch, and that's just a huge pain. So I think that's, in essence, it's like if you use Infusionsoft or ActiveCampaign and you want a deep integration because you're serious about membership rather than just throwing up a quick, little gated piece of content, then it's a no-brainer because, for example, with Infusionsoft, you're billing your subscriptions in Infusionsoft. And with Memberium, people can log into the membership site and control their subscriptions. They can pay bills, they can change credit cards and stuff like that, that you're not really going to get with most other membership solutions because they don't directly connect to the e-commerce function. And without, getting too nerdy in there, the other reason I'd say really that they buy Memberium is just social proof. There's so many big Infusionsoft users who use Memberium that when somebody goes to a conference or, is talking to that company and they say, what do you use? And they say Memberium, then that person wants to use it. And we're lucky that way. But initially we did a lot of work to get those big clients. Like, for example, Dave and I personally helped move John Assaraf's site from one platform to Memberium for free, just so that he would move. He's a friend of ours and whatnot, but it's like, we don't expect them to move on their own dime. Initially we moved them because we were more stable. So it was, to their benefit. But once they all got moved and we're happy about it and we're saying like, yeah, it works perfectly, no problem, support's great, then anyone who listens to them came over. So sorry, long answer. Hopefully that makes sense.
No, that's great. We're going to go for our break. When we come back, we're going to be discussing Mitch's product again, which I cannot so I don't want to embarrass myself. Oh my God, fathers. But my audience know my strange inability to say certain words, but we'll be back in a few moments. We're coming back. It's been an interesting interview so far. We've been getting our names right. I've been called Dave, my older brother who used to torture me. He was a karate expert and he used to practice on me. Still does when he sees me. But before we go on to this interview, I want to talk about one of my great sponsors, and that is Kinsta Hosting. And what is Kinsta? Kinsta specialise in WordPress hosting, and they host the WP-Tonic website, and I've been totally blown away with their support and the quality of their hosting. If you're a power user, membership site, e-commerce, anything where you need some quality hosting, go to Kinsta. They provide all the technology stack that you're looking for, latest version of PHP, staging sites, one-click backup, fantastic UX interface, one of the best on the market, and the cream of the cream, you get fantastic 24/7 support, and I mean some of the best support on the market at the present moment. So if that sounds interesting for you or your clients, go over to kinsta.com and try them out, and also mention that you heard from them from WP-Tonic. I'm going to throw it over to Adrian because he knows more about this subject than me. But Adrian, got another question?
I do. After I listened to your interview, both just this morning and at least with Mixergy, the one with Mixergy, both this morning and when it originally came out, and your whole speech about or your semi-rant about moving from a service-based company and a service business into the productization was very I thought, well, I related to it a lot because one of my own journeys is moving from, I used to work in a digital marketing agency, doing the service work and all of that stuff, and trying my best to move over into actual providing a product and productization. So if you would mind perhaps sharing a little bit of backstory of your own journey, and if you might, some tips on what people who might be, working in the service industry, at least in the digital service industry right now, and what potential avenues they'd be able to look at in order to move from doing that day in and day out to moving to a productized or a productized industry.
Yeah.
Big question, but small parts.
It is, but yeah, it's a really good question. I think that's the crux of it. So to be honest with you guys, I haven't been doing much for a while. I hired Andrew to be our CEO, and I've been focusing on health and family and stuff like that. But I've been thinking a lot about this during that time because, I was able to make a product and it's gotten big enough that it's able to, pay people and support, a bunch of things, which is great. But man, back when I started, holy shit, did I work hard. Like just, busting my balls. And in the earlier days of Memberium, so there's probably two things here. One is there's a period where you just have to test stuff. And I know everybody hears that, but what I mean is I was careful to try to test things that didn't get me stuck, so you don't just want to go out and make a bunch of pieces of software. I know a lot of people who've done that, and then they're stuck maintaining a bunch of pieces of software. And that's why I said earlier when we were laser focused, that was by choice. That was to say, I'm not doing anything else but this. And there was a million opportunities. During the time when we were first building Memberium, people were saying, you should start a mastermind and you should do this and you should, all these different things. Because I think so many people have this idea of, they need to build a digital product empire. They have to have all these components to their business. But I think about it the other way around, which is you need to just have one thing that works. And that one thing that works, you need to grow as big and fast as possible and take advantage of, the economies of scale. And then after it's big, you can add those supporting pieces around it to feed it. And that's essentially what we did with Memberium. But in the early days, some of the mistakes I made were I made a plugin. So I had when I was working in a digital agency, or I was the digital agency, I would, for example, have somebody code up a membership plugin for Joomla or WordPress or whatever. And then I realized, light bulb moment, I could sell this code to the next guy and the next guy. And so I started doing that, but I was selling it for like $500 or something, like not ongoing, just one-time fee, here's your code, not thinking about the support, the updates, anything else. So that was like the period of time where I was just scrambling around, throwing out plugins. And, I had to work that crap off over time, meaning people would come back to me a year later and say, hey, what's, blah, blah, blah. And I felt like I needed to fix it, right? So once I chose a product, it was, I don't know how else to put it, but you just have to go all in. And for me at the time, I felt like, sorry if I'm being too crass here, but I was just whoring myself out. You know what I mean? It was like, okay, I'm happy to consult 10 hours a day and trade time for dollars because my other 6 hours a day, I'm going to be supporting our new customers. You know what I mean? Like the very first person who bought Memberium kind of a thing, setting up the site for them so that they didn't have any of those product issues. That's what I was doing initially. And it sucked and it took a while, but I knew that, the consulting game sucked way worse and would just last forever. So it was totally worth it. So that's, I know I'm kind of jumping around here, but it's kind of like, you test some things out, you try to do it in a way where you're not committing yourself to too much support. And the best way I found to do that was info products, and little freebies as well. So that's the main thing I found is if you don't charge for something, it's much easier to kind of support. Just the expectation is different. Instead of them calling you angry, they're kind of like, hey, could you maybe do me a favor and have a look at this? I don't, so I learned some things by doing that, by doing some free stuff. I learned that I really don't want to sell code without a support plan. And there were some other steps in there, but just to be honest, there was a time where I was working 16, 18 hours a day. I remember I'd have appointments at like 2 and 3 a.m. with people in Australia or England or wherever kind of stuff. And it was just crazy, but it was 100% worth it. And that's the hard thing that I've been thinking about lately is like, how do you tell someone who hasn't been through this that that's worth it, because it sounds insane. But it is totally worth it.
Thank you. So just put up with the grind. It'll all pay off is essentially the tidbit.
As long as you're throwing about a third of your effort out of the grind into something forward thinking. Yeah.
Brilliant.
I just love the way you put that. I just got, listening to a couple of your other previous interviews, you said in this that you had a lawn care business, and then part of it you utilize Infusionsoft for the lawn care business. But why did you do that first step? Can I just ask you, did you have an IT background?
A little.
That, because I couldn't, with your previous interviews, I couldn't kind of link why somebody in lawn care would look at Infusionsoft to market their business. If you understand the confusion.
Yeah. Sorry, I did leave something out. So I had a job. I'll back up even a little bit more. So I got a job while I was in high school, and I thought, and it was like just sales, but they didn't have an IT person. And since I used to build my own computers when I was a kid, to play games on, I was like, oh, I can do this, I can do that. And I just kept doing whatever they needed. And so I grew into IT. I have no education. I dropped out of high school when I got that job because I thought, oh, this job's amazing. I don't need school. And so when I quit that job, it was basically like, well, I quit it because I was sick of being in an office, being inside, and I wanted to be outside. And so I thought, oh, lawn care, that makes sense. And then as soon as I started doing it, I realized, like Excel wasn't going to cut it. Since I'd run systems, I was just like, screw it. I'm not even going to do any of that. I'm just going to buy a system. And like I said, it was overkill, but it was great. Serendipity.
How long did you actually do the lawn care thing, out of curiosity?
2.5 years, probably.
2.5 years.
Yeah.
So did you sell it, or did you just like end it?
Basically just ended it. I was doing it with my brother, and I was like, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore. And I think he sold it to my cousins, but it didn't get huge. We were doing stupid stuff with Infusionsoft. Like we had our lawnmowers and weed eaters as contacts in Infusionsoft, and then we'd put them into maintenance sequences. So it'd be like mower 1, needs its oil changed and things like that. So
that's one way to do it.
Yeah. That's why I say overkill. I had too much time. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. It's a fun story.
So, can I ask?
No, you go ahead.
So, like you said earlier on in the interview, you got your product, and then it works with WordPress. There's a lot of fully hosted competitors, but what do you see as the strength of still using WordPress with your product, or WordPress in general?
Yeah, I've always thought this. I don't think that any of those hosted solutions can keep up with the thousands of developers who are working WordPress, So it's always on the leading edge. One of the examples, and this is a little while ago, but it was when they started doing that like Facebook login thing. It was like immediately available through WordPress, and we didn't have to do anything, basically. So I think you just benefit so much from that open source community. And even if you have to buy the product, still, there's just more people adding to it.
Yeah, you've got a whole army, haven't you, really? And was it now up to 34% of the internet?
Yeah.
Just about, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Over to you, Adrian.
So what are you, so you mentioned that, you've been taking the last little while you've hired your own CEO, and you've been focused on the family. You're moving into a new office. What can we expect from, any new exciting projects coming up, things that you're working on, things people can get excited about, either in the Infusionsoft community or outside?
Yeah, something that I can't talk about very much, but I'm very excited about, because it's not about publishing content, which is what Memberium kind of does, how it displays and controls, but it's about how people make the content, because we've worked with so many membership site people, and a lot of them really, really, really closely. Like, we've done workshops and consulting and coaching that, understanding some of their issues, we're cooking up something that will help them get their content out of themselves and into the site intuitively without having to build as much. Because most people like make the content forever and then build forever. And this will just be just basically make it.
That sounds exciting. Is this going to be a WordPress solution or something else?
It'll work with WordPress, but it's going to be a mobile solution. That's why I'm all about the mobile.
Very cool. Sounds exciting. I'm excited. What are some of the big issues that you find that are like common among all of the people who are trying to build these course and membership sites? What are some common problems that you encounter?
I mean, it's basically ignorance, and I mean that in a nice way. It's that they are amazing at guitar or woodworking or taxes or whatever. They don't know crap about the internet, right? Or internet marketing or membership sites, technology, and Memberium is not necessarily plug and play, right? It's WordPress. You got to put it in, you got to connect it, you got to do these things. And we try to make it as easy as possible. But for most people, that's the part they get stuck on, is the tech part and the marketing part. And so helping them, and beyond that, even the content structuring, they might be a tax expert. They have no idea how to teach, you know what I mean? And so that's kind of where I'm wanting to go, is an intuitive way of saying like, okay, something. All right. Let's talk you through how you're going to divide and structure that. Now let's talk you through how you introduce your clients to each piece of content. You know what I mean? If they don't go, we'll use the tax expert. If that tax expert doesn't go take a few courses himself on how to design and build a membership site, and he just tries to wing it, most likely it's going to fail, or at least take a lot longer than it could have. So the smart people, they go educate themselves, but even then they have to educate themselves and then implement. And there's just, it's funny for me to say this because I'm always like, hey, let's make membership sites easier kind of a thing, but it's hard, you know what I mean? Like to build all that content, to get it into a site, to get it all working and tested, and then to market and sell it. Is a huge thing. And what most people are thinking is, oh, I'm sick of trading time for dollars. I'm going to make a product and never have to work again. And it's like, okay, well, there's a huge gap, right?
There's still work. It's just a different kind of work.
Yeah.
Right. The work never really ends. One of the things that when people download our own products, it's like, just so you know, there's no such thing as set it and forget it. If you think that's what our product provides, you are completely and utterly misinformed.
Yeah, totally.
I interviewed Justin, the CEO of LearnDash, a few weeks ago, and they've got a new version of LearnDash 3.0, and they went to 10 Up, one of the leading WordPress agencies, and they spent a lot of money on UX design on the interface, and I think they've done a fantastic job. Is that something that you increasingly focus on your own product, the UX design?
Yes, it is. So I'm always, kind of mentioning to Dave little tweaks and stuff like that. I always want it a little different, but we're also focused on kind of the install process and having a separate wizard, because one of the realizations I came to is Memberium is such a big, powerful toolbox. There's so much you can do that trying to make the whole thing intuitive doesn't make that much sense. But to help people build a basic site, or to have a few recipes that they can plug in some variables to and it can spin up a site, that's what I look at in the user interface. What Justin did, I think, is amazing. So I think he's 100% on track. And we love LearnDash. But yeah, for Memberium, it's a lot more diverse in what it can do. Yeah. And so we've really struggled with, there's 1,000 different ways to make a site. So how do you guide somebody through that?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, because there's always this strain on functionality. You want to give as much functionality because that, freedom, functionality, the core worth of the product. But the more things it does, the more complicated it gets, the more pressure there is on UX and ease of use, isn't there?
Yeah, for sure. And LearnDash is a lot. LearnDash is an amazing big plugin, but from my perspective, it's much simpler than Memberium, only because it's designed to, build courses, and there's options within that. But Memberium is used to run franchises and associations and memberships and courses and internal training portals, and software companies run on Memberium. It just does a bunch of junk. Like anything that you can put behind a login, it will do.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
You don't necessarily see LearnDash as a competitor. You see it as like a complementary platform, because there's lots of people using LearnDash and Memberium together, is there not?
Yeah, I would say LearnDash is our biggest partner. Like they, for sure. That's what we want 100% is, in fact, everybody who buys Memberium, hey, you're using LearnDash, so yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, well, that's really interesting, because obviously my own company, we specialize in the support of Lifter LMS and LearnDash. So it's interesting in one of your biggest customer groups utilize both. I didn't realize that. That's fascinating. Well, we're going to finish up on the podcast. Hopefully Mitch has forgiven me for butchering his name, his company, but he's going to stay on for 10 minutes for some bonus content. I've really enjoyed the interview. So Mitch, how can people find out more about yourself and the company in general?
Yeah, I'm kind of a hermit, so don't worry about me, but memberium.com, you guys can ask anything you want to the support there. The support's super friendly, super quick, meaning even if you're not a customer and you have questions about memberships or WordPress or Infusionsoft, feel free to come over and say hi.
Right. And Adrian, how can people find more about you and your company?
Well, if you need marketing automation as a service for WordPress, so if you want to replace Infusionsoft or ActiveCampaign with a WordPress plugin, then you can head on over to groundhog with 2 G's at the end.io to download it for absolutely free and go ahead and play with that. I am not a hermit. You can reach out to me in a variety of ways. My personal email address is info@groundhog.io, and you can also reach out to me on Facebook via our Facebook page, Groundhog WP, or in the Facebook group as well.
And thank you for that. And if you want to see our interviews the earliest with bonus content, subscribe to the YouTube, the WP YouTube channel. That's where you'll be able to watch these interviews and other content the earliest. We'll be back next week with another great guest, giving you insight and value for allowing you to build that online business and become an entrepreneur, e-learning entrepreneur yourself. We'll see you next week, folks. Bye. So, I got a question that's been mulling around in my head as we going through this interview. A few months ago, I interviewed Ryan Carson from the founder of Treehouse, and he's been very outspoken about the future of education in the normal educational establishments. First of all, I've had a lot of people say that building a membership site or becoming an e-learning entrepreneur it's become too competitive. It's become too hard, and I don't really see that. I just see us on the tip of possibilities. Really, where do you think the market's going, Mitch?
Yeah, a couple of things. I think education is one of the biggest industries, probably after like healthcare and defense. So if you think about all the money poured into public schools and into colleges and into all, basically the aggregated amount of money people spend on education, it's ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous. And so as more of that moves online, I do think the market's for sure growing. Yes, some niches are more competitive, but for example, we homeschool. So my philosophy on it is all other types of education are inferior versus online. And I only say that because you're going to go to some substandard teacher 90% of the time versus find the best teacher online if you know how to find them. So to me, I think it's just going to continue to move online. Sure, that will make it more competitive, but the biggest trend I've seen is that people can't, like 5-10 years ago, you probably could have just made a membership site and then lived off that membership site. But now a membership site to me is just a component of the business. So people who want to become an e-learning entrepreneur, I don't, that is hard. And I know, I'm in a mastermind group with a bunch of people who do really, really well doing just that, just selling information, multiple 7 figures, no problem. But they're a little bit the exception. And there are a lot of people who struggle doing it. And my main advice to people is, let's go back to our tax professional. You're not going to move from doing taxes to teaching taxes. You should do both. The membership site should support your business. Your business should support the membership site. Like, they all have to work together. And that's more and more what I encourage people to do. It's almost like, don't quit your day job. It's like, put all this together and you can still replace yourself out of the business. That's still the idea. This is just a component rather than the magic bullet, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes total sense. And in some ways, inbound marketing is education, isn't it? Fundamentally, I think to be a success in a lot of different industries, basically, you've got to be part of your business model is you've got to be an educator anyway. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, if you want to win, yeah.
Over to you, Adrian.
So going back to the Mixergy interview, which we should probably link as well because it's really good. Yes. There was a part that I personally also identify with, where a lot of people were using your products or using Memberium before it got super huge, and they were doing significantly better, at least financially, or at least appeared to be financially than you, and it caused you a little bit envious. And then you were during a mastermind, someone had mentioned to you that, yeah, but they can't go and sell their business afterward because they are essentially the brand and you have a product that you can then go on and sell later. Is this ringing any bells?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I have a question surrounding this whole theme. Is a lot of people that they're going and they're building these courses and these brands, but they are essentially, at the crux of it, they are the business. And, in 30, 40 years, if, when they either, circumstances provide that they won't be able to do that anymore, do you have any thoughts on how they're able to then structure their business or this course or this membership or whatever it is that they're trying to build so that they can avoid that sort of shortfall where they can no longer essentially remove themselves out because it's all them?
Yeah, I do. So one of the things that people don't think about very much is that their content has a shelf life. So it's just like any produce at the store or whatever, and if it's a faster paced market, it's got a shorter shelf life, something more stable is a longer shelf life. So these people who try to sell their business, let's say they do record the greatest library of content in history. It's like, well, how long is it the greatest? Because a buyer is going to want to know. And I've been close to people, some pretty famous people, trying to sell their brand, and most of them ultimately just give up. Now, the most successful I've seen at it is, I would say, Ryan Deiss, and he teaches something on this, so I don't want to take away from how he teaches it, but I'll give a little summary of it. He talks about transferring your personality onto the brand, and what he says is, if you take like a person, they have good things about them, they have bad things about them, they have strengths and weaknesses and whatnot, and you need to basically move all that onto the brand. So because the idea is it gives a brand a real personality. So instead of digital marketer being perfect, they intentionally put attributes of Ryan into digital marketer so that people could still relate with a brand instead of a person. And that whole thing to me was super genius because it's still an information marketing company, but he was able to bring in other experts and get them to teach. And the thing that held it together, whereas other companies have tried this, people have tried to bring in other experts, and it doesn't gel as well because they didn't get that deep psychological part where, if the brand is too shiny, you can't relate with it. That really stupid Lincoln commercial with Matthew McConaughey driving in the Lincoln? Yeah. It's like, why is he in that car, right? What's the point? And it's to try to give Lincoln a personality. That was the point, because otherwise what's a Lincoln? And so with these brands people have, especially if your brand is your name, like Tony Robbins or whatever, that makes things pretty difficult. But even these other companies where the brand isn't necessarily their name, but people definitely equate them with it, that's kind of the escape, is you have to figure out how to get teachers who are enough like you that the audience will go to them, and you can bring them in as a co-host initially or whatever. But at some point of teaching with that person, they become likable enough. They have a little bit of their own audience, which is inside your company. And, then you can slowly pass it over to them. Now, that's all on the information marketing side. But this is why, to me, I wanted to make a product, because I've done information marketing myself. I've built Infusionsoft training courses, And I learned from building Infusionsoft training courses about the shelf life, because Infusionsoft changed their brand on me. And it's like, oh, all my videos now are bad, right? Or at least people perceive them as bad, even though the only thing that changed was a color. That wasn't a good day for me, obviously. But, you know, doing that kind of info stuff, that's where I realized, oh, info is only a piece. You know, info for 99% of people is not going to be the whole business, but it can be a great piece of a brand. And you can add, I know I'm wandering a bit, but so I'll cut it off there and just say that
this is all great content. No wandering. That's all is welcome.
Cool. Yeah. No, to summarize, yes, you can transfer yourself into brand, and I would look up Ryan Dice's stuff on that. It's super interesting.
Brilliant. I think all of that is just incredibly valuable, especially for people who are looking to go on this road and create their informational products that they can set themselves up for success later on without having to go through obviously that pain point of I am the brand and now I can't sell it, or I can't move on, or I can't transition into somewhere else.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you this question, but if you don't want to go down this road, I totally understand. About Infusionsoft, and the rebrand. Is it a rebrand? Keep. I'm a bit confused myself what they're trying to achieve there. What do you think they're trying to achieve there? Are they like trying to put lipstick on a pig, really, and rebrand, or is it? Have you got any insights of what you think they're trying to achieve there?
I do, and I could be wrong here, but I've been using Infusionsoft since 2006 myself, and I'm good friends with all of them, and so I feel that I see them objectively, meaning I'm not gonna. A long time ago, I would have defended Infusionsoft, to people and whatnot, and then there was a period of time where I was like, no, you need to go somewhere else, kind of a thing. But after getting some distance from it, I'll give you a little bit of the story, at least from my perspective. So. They, several years ago, when they got a bunch of money, they decided, well, Infusionsoft, the current product, may not be the future because of all the legacy architecture that's in there. And so they split off a team to go make a new thing that was going to supposedly serve the future market. And in my opinion, they took a little too long with that. Not just my opinion, but the whole partner community was kind of like, hey, what are you guys doing? But ultimately, that side project that they started, not exactly that code, but that concept is Keep. So Keep is actually a separate product from Infusionsoft. Right. It is a beginner's version, you might say, of Infusionsoft. So they've got Keep now and they've got Infusionsoft. They've got two. And I think what they're going to do is they're going to pull features from Infusionsoft into Keep. And they've stated this as their intention. And I actually think they're going to do it, which I don't always think they're going to do what they say, but in this case I do. They're going to pull features into Keep until Keep is big enough, good enough, whatever, that it can serve the low end of the market and the high end of the market. So I think Infusionsoft as a brand is going to eventually go away and it'll become Keep Pro or something. I don't really know. But I think it's smart. They're going to take a hit for it short term. They're in the dip right now where they changed brands. They're hurting because of it, etc. But in the long run, I think it's a great brand name. And I think they're going to come back and do really well. So it's not just a rebrand. It is a different product. But yeah, it's they've got a maybe rough year or two. I don't know quite where they are in the journey, but when they first did it, I was kind of like, oh, that's really smart, but it's going to suck for a while.
I love it. Just to finish off, because really you've had that legacy code problem in WordPress, its commitment to run very old versions of PHP. And then you had Gutenberg and all the fuss around Gutenberg. How did Gutenberg and the page editor and the vision of Matt did that affect your product and your team at all?
Not that I heard of, but I'm a little distant from it at all. Typically, WordPress updates don't affect us. Dave's really high quality coder where he follows the rules, and when things change, it's typically backward compatible and we're fine. So he may now go add more features to be more compatible with the new stuff. But I didn't hear anything from it, honestly.
No, I've heard you in your previous interviews said that with your partner, he chose to really keep it to the rules of WordPress, and I think you mentioned in previous interviews that you've had previous partner. I think you talked about a previous partner you had that wanted to do his own thing with code, and it caused you a lot of pain, so you decided not to go down that road. Is that right?
Yeah, it is. Previously the guy I was working with, he wanted to control things, and so he would take shortcuts, and then every time WordPress changed, everything was broken. It was a nightmare, and that product is basically now extinct because of that. So
yeah, that must have been painful. Well, Mitch, thank you so much for coming on the show, dealing with my mispronunciations. I was at my best today, but I think my partner and myself asked you some decent questions. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and you will come back at some stage and have another interview. I've really enjoyed it. I think we've covered a lot of ground. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show.
You're welcome, George. I loved it. I know your name's not George.
Get that last one in there.
Last one.
I just deserve
Brilliant.
it. We'll be back next week, folks, with another great interview. We'll see you soon, folks. Bye.
Thanks,
Bye, everyone.
George. See ya.